Internet! A pleasure as always. So last week I promised that this week I was going to do a video on how to wire the entire 3D printer, but I'm going to go a step further than that and I'm going to do the entire electrical system of the 3D printer. So yes, the electrical system in detail. First, I'm going to start out with the Arduino, the ramps board, and the drivers. These are the three components that work together to make the brain of your Robo 3D printer. Now, these are also the things that makes the brain of most 3D printers, which is why you can buy a generic kit and shove it inside your Robo and make it work just fine in case you blow something up. Oh, what do you want?
Oh, were you in the middle of the video?
Yes!
I literally heard nothing, so I thought it was okay to...
I'm yelling at the camera! Now, I don't want to disassemble my entire Robo 3D printer to show you the individual Arduino Mega, the ramps 1.4, and the drivers that I have for the printer. So I will instead be putting together a kit that I have off to the side that I actually will be using in a future video for somebody's 3D printer. Hint, we're making a 3D printer on the side later on, but maybe not anytime soon, so just stay tuned. So if you want to know how to assemble the Arduino, ramps board, and drivers, keep watching. If you just want to know how to wire the 3D printer, I'm going to put a link here. And it's going to jump you to the middle of the video after I'm done talking about the Arduino and the ramps board and the drivers. I will then show you how to wire that all into the 3D printer. So let's get started on the brain of the 3D printer. Alright, so first thing, of course, the brains of the operation, the Arduino Mega itself. Now, this is your printer's logical processor. Secondly, we have the ramps board. This is a shield built for the Arduino Mega. This goes on top. The pins actually line up perfectly. So all you do is you just line the pins up and you just press these together. So once you put the ramps board on the Arduino, it is now ready for a 3D printer almost. So you'll notice that there's these pins between each section where the driver is supposed to go in. Let's see if I can get a close-up on that. So these are the placement for the drivers right here. You'll notice that there's 6 pins between the left and right side, or if you want to say the top and bottom, of the driver itself. So there's a pin that goes in between each of these that completes a circuit. And you have to make sure, if you're buying this, that you complete the circuit with the pins. So if you did buy this off of Amazon or some other reputable dealer, they're going to give you these pins to attach to the board. So let me open these real fast. So these just get placed inside the terminals for each driver. So that's going to go here. This will go here. And this one will go here. So they do give you 16 jumpers to put between all of the connections and have one extra in case I guess you lose one. But I just put mine on all, including E1. That way that if I decide to buy a driver, which is one of these right here, I can just put that right on the board. No problems, no issues. I now have the ability to put the drivers on the ramps board. So usually I would put the provided heat sinks on top of the drivers before I installed these, but I currently don't have any thermal paste or thermal tape, so I'm just going to do this without it for the purposes of this video. But if you do install these on a ramps board without a heatsink, you have a high potential of breaking the driver. So just make sure you're aware that you should have a heatsink on the top of this. So if you don't know which way this is going to go, if you look at the side of this, let me get a close-up real fast. So on the side of this that has the potentiometer to control the amperage, you can actually see down here, it says direction and step. These are really the only two that you need to worry about because direction and step are what control the board. and on the Arduino board, but the corner that says direction and step matches up with another corner right here that also says direction and step. So you want to make sure direction and step are lined up with each other. So look for step and direction on the board. You're just going to press the driver into place. And this is for the Z-axis, this is for the Y-axis, this is for the X-axis, and then this one, again, look for that step and direction, make sure they're the same way. This is going to go on E0, step and direction line up. So now that you have your drivers on the board, along with your ramps board and your Arduino, you're ready to wire this all up. And I will reiterate this, make sure you have your heat sinks on your drivers with thermal paste so that these do not overheat. I will not be using this board for this video when I get to the wiring section. So make sure you have heat sinks on your drivers. So now we're working with a circuitry down on the bottom of the 3D printer. Now the first thing you want to do if you have an LCD controller is, of course, take that off. You want to make sure that the power supply is unplugged in the back. And if you have feet on the 3D printer, I recommend you take those off and then turn it on its side. So you're going to, of course, want to remove the screws on the bottom of this so that you can get inside and then view the entire circuitry. This is the 12-volt fan that cools the ramps board. I have it extended on a wire so that when I open this case, it doesn't fall off the 3D printer. A mod that I definitely recommend. So on the bottom of the 3D printer, there are three major sections. You have the logic up at the top with your Arduino, your ramps, and your drivers. You then have your stepper motors, and that's in the middle plate. Then you have your power supply all the way to the right. Now, I'm going to use a pair of cutters, and I'm going to undo all of this and plug everything from the board. Then I'm going to show you how to wire everything from the ground up. Power supply is easy. You have your ground, neutral, and live going into the power supply, and that converts it into positive and negative 12 volts. And then you plug that in to this. Now this is where it begins to get complicated. It depends on what you want to do for the circuit. It doesn't matter. I call it a live 12 volts. So if power is being given to the printer, then the fan on the extruder will be on, lights will be on, stuff like that. So this is the fan that runs on the extruder for my E3D V6, and this is wired into the ground and the 12 volt rail on the actual power supply from the switch. And that goes up here to the top right. I'll readjust the camera in a second, and that's going to go into the power supply. But this is the only thing that comes from the power supply that you really need. That's it. So this is the ramps board, and this is that power supply cord I was just talking about. So that's going to go right here on the top. It just clips into the top connector, and this gives ground and 12 volts to the ramps board, which gives enough voltage to the Arduino board underneath it. So once that's plugged in, the connector right next to it, you can see it right here, it's labeled D8. Now, this may or may not be the same, I'm assuming for the bed at least, it's the same as the R1 Plus. So this is going to be for the 2 pins that come from the heated bed. I have the ribbon cable upgrade, so this wasn't what came with my original printer, but that's what I have on it now. And so all you have to do is just undo these 2 screws. So these 2 connectors come from the power line that goes to the heated bed. Now you'll know that these are for the power because these are 4 wires tied into one rather than the 2 small wires that come off the same ribbon cable. This is the thermistor, I'll get to that later. So that goes into, on my printer, the D8 connector, and they do not have a polarity. D8 on the R1 is used to heat the bed. That's now hooked up, so now I'm going to hook the fans up. The fans are on D9. I have mine labeled 9 and 10, so I know which one goes to which. So these are the wires that go to the fans. Now, unlike the heated bed, the fans actually do have a polarity because they are not a heating coil, They're moving the DC fans. So you need to make sure that when you plug this up, you have the right side on negative and the left side on positive, which means that red cord to the left, black cord to the right. So I'm going to hook that up real fast. Now I have the power going to the fan, the D8 connector for the bed, the D9 for the fan ducts. So now I'm at D10. D10 on the R1 is for the extruder heater cartridge. So that's going to be the one that I have marked 10 in my wire management. I'm going to put that in there real fast. Again, with anything that involves heat, there is no polarity. So there's no negative and positive if you're heating something up. All you're doing is passing voltage into a piece of metal that's a semiconductor, and it produces heat as a byproduct. Alright, so now I've done the main top end, so I have the 12 volt power source, D8, D9, D10, and again that is bed, fans, extruder, and then in the back I also have the 12 volt lead right here, right here, this wire, that goes directly into the power supply and gives the extruder's cooling fan 12 volts constantly. I'm going to use a bit of zip ties to clean this up, and then I'm going to move on further down the board. The next step is to put the motors in. And so I usually start with the extruder motor because that is the one that is by itself that comes from the loom tube or the wire chain that you have. And so I have mine marked off so that the one black wire that's in the connector matches a little black Sharpie mark that I put on the printer a while back. And so this is going to go on E0. I do have a driver for E1. I don't have it activated yet. The Y stepper motor is going to be the one that's in the middle of the printer. And this is X, Y, and Z. So this is the Y one right here. And like I said, I got the little black marker to let me know exactly where to go with that one. So there are two main loom tubes. There's one that goes to your extruder, and there's one that comes from your X-axis. So this X-axis one has the X-axis motor on it as well. So that's going to go right there. And the last one I need is the two Z's. Now, because I did the lead screw upgrade kit, I now have modular Z-axis cables along with the motors. These go on same way because this is obviously the shorter one. This is going to go over all the connections, and this is going to be plugged into this motor. And this is the longer cable, so I'm going to have this one go down to the one on the bottom. So there you go. So now you have your X, Y, Z, and E motors all hooked up. And remember that there's two motors that are in the same orientation on the Z stepper driver. And there's two pins available for you to plug those into. So let me tidy this up with some zip ties, and then I'll come back and show you again. After you get your motor situated, you then want to get your limit switches together. There are 3 limit switches that you will use for the printer. One of them is coupled together in a group. That is going to be your Z axis. Like I said before, just like the extruder and the bed, this doesn't have a polarity. So you can put this either on the negative or positive side and it won't matter. Its position does. So you'll see these are labeled in columns. That's S, negative, and positive. And the rows are labeled X, Y, and Z. So on the top, there is X, and you want to be on the negative and S. Same thing with Y, negative and S. Same thing with Z. So this is the Z axis. So I'm going to put this on Z and make sure you're on the S and the negative. So it's going to be the pins all the way to the right if you're looking at the board the way you are looking at it from the camera. I will then do the Y, which is coming out of the middle of the bed. And then this should be the X axis. Again, it doesn't matter which way you put them. I put them all the same direction, but you want to make sure you're on the middle and the far right pin hooking up your end stops. So, like before, I'm going to use some zip ties to clean this all up, and then I'll get back to you. So between your Z-axis stepper motor and your limit switches, right here is your port for your thermistors. So T0 is going to be your extruder, and T1 should be the bed. So you're going to find your bed on the same ribbon cable, if you have the ribbon cable upgrade, for your heated bed. And this is going to be the thermistor wire. And you're going to plug this right into T1. Again, just like the limit switches and the extruder and the bed, there is no polarity to thermistors because they are reading the resistance across the wire. So if the resistance increases, that means that the temperature increases, and that's how the thermistors work on the 3D printer. So this is the thermistor for my extruder. This goes into T0 right here. Again, there is no polarity. And I'm done with the majority of the bottom end right here. Like I said, I'm going to tie this up with some zip ties, and then I'll get back to you. Alright, so now I've cleaned up all the wires nice and pretty. Now, there are a few things left. One is the fan that cools the bottom. Now, you can plug this into the 12-volt auxiliary. So between X and your polyfuses, there is a small 2-pin connector way in there. And it says 12-volt aux. Because I run the lights on my 3D printer, what I've done is I've made a 2-pin connector that fits inside this that then parallels out to 2 more connectors. So one can be hooked up to the fan, which is right here, and the other one can be hooked up to my lights. And so these, instead of running a 12-volt connection to the top of this, I just go off the 12-volt auxiliary right here. And if you have the RGB LED mod like I do, this pin right here, this goes right here, and this controls the sensors for the RGB LEDs, and then you get 12 volts and ground from either the 12-volt auxiliary or the 12-volt power rail up here. Another thing that you might have as a modification is an LCD controller. No, I'm not going to put the LCD controller in here, but there is this small little connector. And this connector plugs into the same spot that your micro SD card would be essentially, which is usually up here. I took mine out, of course, and it used to be in this small connector, so I could put this connector in place. And this covers the same pins over on the bottom. And then these attach to your LCD controller. So one major thing I was doing throughout the whole course of this was every single time I secured something with a zip tie, I made sure it worked first. So I didn't want to just assemble the entire 3D printer, make it look really clean underneath, but then something doesn't work. So every single time I did one small change, I tested the printer. I did it off camera, but I tested the printer. So make sure if you are changing anything on the printer, you test it before you do anything else. So there you have it. You now know, if you watch the entire video, everything you need to know about the electrical system of the Robo 3D printer. If you have any questions about this video or suggestions for future videos, make sure you leave your comments down below. If you like this video and want to see more like it, make sure you click that subscribe button. Like I hinted earlier in this video, I will be making a 3D printer with my 3D printer. Either Robert or Austin is going to pay for the parts, and they're going to own a 3D printer that is manufactured from my 3D printer. It'll be a fun project and hopefully a 1,000 subscriber celebration if I get there. I mean, I would really hate to just have the subscriber count go down randomly. So I'm getting pumped for it. If you want to get me even more pumped for it, click the subscribe button. I think we just hit 900 like today, so that's awesome. So hopefully I can hit 1,000 soon and get my butt into gear so I can get this 3D printer running. We're probably going to be using a snappy rep wrap design because that is cheap and mostly 3D printed. So that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.